Come on in, everybody. Welcome to the first pod class of the new year. We're going to be talking about intuitive development, how to train your intuitive abilities. And first of all, good to see you, Cody. Happy New Year.
Likewise, good to see you. Haven't seen you this new year yet.
Right. So before we jump in, two announcements. One, I'm teaching a class with the Shift Network next week, starting January 13th on empaths, on how to be a healthy empath. And two, me and Cody are teaching intuitive training, our year-long training, starting March 31st. It's going to be a weekly class, and there'll be practicums and practice spaces to go along with that. So that is March 31st.
Coming right up.
That's
Coming
right.
right up. You'll be here before you know it. And 3, we are leading a group to Japan in November. Pretty exciting year coming up.
That's right. Okay. So maybe we could start off by just discussing how we develop our intuitive abilities in a structured, grounded way. Obviously, that's what we're going to do in our year-long intuitive training. But how does somebody? I've gotten this question 1,000 times, which is, it'll always start off with something like, David, I've had a predictive dream, or I had this intuition about a person and then it was right, or I had this vision and then it unfolded. But how do I give that structure, and how do I actually develop it, right? How do I develop the ability? And so this question comes up again and again, and I want you to share too, but for me, it's always start off with meditation tools first. So, for example, if there's too much noise in your head, how are you going to be able to hear your own inner voice or see a clear image or have a knowingness? So, one, we always start with meditation tools to clear our space and have some stillness. And then, two, we have to know where to look and how to look. How do we look at energy? How do we use this mind's eye to see? What are the mechanics of looking at energy, which is what I think we talk about every month in one way or another. And then 3 is you really develop this ability by reading, doing energy reading, whether it's on a question or on another person, and of course, on yourself. And so first meditation, then mechanics, and then reading. So maybe today we can walk everyone through what some of that looks like, what some of those tools might be like, and how to start to develop these abilities. And obviously, always in a safe, grounded way. So there's so many videos on YouTube of like, all right, do remote viewing like they do in the CIA. Go find this submarine or whatever it is, or talk to aliens. And then the next thing you know, your eyes are crossed and you can't sleep and you're like shaking. And you're like, I think there's a ghost in my room and the government's looking for me.
That is one rabbit hole one could go down. Yes.
Yeah.
But that is a really good question. How do you develop your psychic abilities? It's funny when you talk about that. That was my question when I first got a reading. I've told this story. I was like 14, but my one question was, well, how do I develop my psychic abilities? And of course, that person did not have an answer for me. Not because it's a difficult answer necessarily, but because for her it was a very natural thing that had happened, and she just figured out how to use it and become a reader. Maybe it was in her family lineage, maybe there was a mentor she had around that just kind of encouraged her. But it is a really big question. How do you develop your intuitive abilities? And part of that development is kind of learning to trust that part of you, to not only move into and open up to that information and that part of you, but then to believe it, get validation for it, trust it, and weed out those things that are really not your answer that come from other sources. So I think that one of the basic things that we might frame it as is that in our head, we have our thinking mind, our intellectual problem solving mind. And then there's this other part of our awareness that we could call our intuitive mind, where we kind of become aware of energy. And we can, through that mind's eye, that part of the mind, we start to see energy. And then the big question where training, our training is a year long, so it's very in depth, very intensive. It's that long not because it takes that long to see, it takes practice and experience to read what you see, to get information out of what you see. And what you were just describing, someone opens up to all this information comes in, but they don't have a framework for it. And so then it can go down these very interesting rabbit holes if there's no context of how to interact with that information.
And I think for probably thousands of years, this information was passed down from teacher to student, right? From master
Yeah.
to disciple. And the teacher decided when the student was ready and the student listened. And,
Yeah.
there's in Zen, there's all these stories of you go to the monastery and you ask, can I come in? And they say no. And they make you wait outside in the rain for 2 weeks. And then after that, they make you chop wood for a year. And then maybe they start teaching you some meditation. And then 10 years later, some of the stuff we're talking about now. And
Yeah.
and that's how it was done. The information was protected. And it's a two-sided coin because I see it from both sides. Because now that so much information is out there and you can go on YouTube and you can go, okay, how do I do remote viewing like the CIA does or something? Then you start tripping out. And it's not safe, it's not structured, it's not grounded. And anyone and everyone who wants to make money or get fame or whatever their motivation is, they just start doing this stuff. And so, there's been times where I've had students say, well, you're teaching it too slow. I want it faster. Well, your intellect wants it faster. I know you want all the information right now, but your energy body can't handle the actual change that happens when you do this work that fast. So it's not about the information, it's about the transformation that happens as you do the work. And we do it at a certain pace for very
Right.
specific reasons. And so people will get out in front and be like, I'll give it all to you in 10 minutes or an hour because they have different incentives, and those incentives are not the students' well-being and their growth. And so
Yeah.
that's why we
It,
have specific structures. Yeah.
right. Because it it doesn't matter how fast you get the information. You'll only grow at the pace you can integrate it. So it isn't really informational heavy, it's transformational and integrative in terms of where the impact is. You can take any of them, even basic tools, the notion of grounding, and years, develop and grow in your understanding of what that is over the course of years, because there's a depth to it that you grow into really recognizing, or a chakra, or an energy system, or any of this information. So it is much more like an art than a science that has an intellectual foundation. It's you grow in the art of reading more than just the skills of it. And there are skills, of course. But the other thing about what you were just talking about, where for maybe thousands of years it was passed down from teachers to student, there was also a kind of cultural context that you already had as a foundation of what intuition is, what energy and spirit is, how it kind of works in a real general sense. And if you became a practitioner in that art, there was still this broader foundation that was already there. And we don't really have that. We went really into the scientific, analytical, intellectual mind is the only thing of value, and the intuitive stuff and the stuff you would see in the dream world is all just made up and has no value. So we're having to kind of refine find or rediscover that part of ourselves, and kind of see the value in it and then go deeper into it. And the real value in it is that that's where you get your own answer. Your true answer for yourself is from that intuitive part of you. No, it's the answer that will lead you on your path to growth and to the next step. That's the only place you can get those answers, really, is through that intuitive part of yourself.
Yeah, let me add that we're entering a new age. So for the past 3 years, we started to enter the AI age of information. So for thousands of years, everything was passed down from teacher to student, right? From master to disciple. Whether it was in the spirituality or you were a blacksmith or a cobbler or whatever it was. Everything was passed down directly from one person to another. And then we started writing books. So we started spreading some knowledge for the, very few people that could read for a very long time. And then eventually the printing press that's, spread more and more. And then we got into the information age. The internet came about and now we're all sharing information. I mean, obviously there was television, radio, and then the internet, and now we're coming into, and then YouTube. I feel like YouTube is its own thing, part of the internet information age. And now we're into this AI arc where we're asking some computer for answers, and it is formulating answers for us from all our combined knowledge as a species. And that's a pretty trippy thing because sometimes it's extremely accurate and other times it's just off because it can't actually feel, see, or know anything. It's just predicting based on the past, which has its own kind of limitations, own kind of power and own kind of limitations. But through all of those arcs, the thing that never ultimately changes is that there are certain kinds of pieces of information and answers that you can only get through your own growth and inner exploration and maybe being connected to a spiritual dimension of life. And how you learn those tools and information, sure, maybe that changes over time. Like it used to be just master to disciple, and now you're even on, on the internet learning it. But what doesn't change is the actual mechanics of how to do it and where the information comes from. So whether you're kind of downloading it from your higher self, hearing it from your inner voice, feeling it, knowing it, all of that doesn't change. But what's made it way more difficult, I think, now is that there's so much information and so many options and teachers and noise, and people have lost their attention span. So it's very hard to actually hear the information and feel the energy through all of the noise. It's really a double-edged sword. And then a lot of misinformation and bad information that you just, there, it's like a tsunami of wild information that people have to sift through to find what they're really looking for. And then to do that, we're not focusing on our inner guidance. We're letting the algorithm decide. And the algorithm is deciding based on what we focus on, but that might sometimes be low level emotions and desires, not always our highest good and wisdom. So the algorithm isn't based on, let me show you more of what triggers your wisdom and focus.
Right.
So we find
Yeah.
ourselves in some really intense cul-de-sacs of information and energy. And that's why I think people are feeling more lost and confused than ever before.
Yeah. And it's so fast with that level of access to information, is just so fast right now. To me, it just feels like everything's happening so quickly if you get caught in that. And it's very difficult in some ways to slow down to the speed of meditation, which is kind of found in this inner stillness. And that's where the answers then arise from. It's kind of funny that description of AI where it has all this information, but it's not creating something new. It's only taking information from the past. There is a part in us where our mind kind of works that way. The analyzer part of us or the reactive part of us will just give an answer based on what it already knows of the past. It like It's just accessing what we already know. And the thing that is exciting about the opening up to that intuitive side of us is we start to see things that we didn't know before. It's like, I've never seen it that way before. Oh, I've never seen that before. What is that? And that's where we grow, is not by repeating the past or conditioning or programming, but by looking at something right in the moment, kind of taking away all those filters and seeing, well, what is this really? And gaining an insight and taking a step. And that's what happens as an intuitive reader over and over again.
Yeah. And by the way, we're just on the very early s- cusp, a very early part of the stages of this AI development.
Yeah.
People will marry their AIs, they'll put them in robots, they'll do our medicine. It'll be everywhere. And we're going to have to deal with that as a society. And there's great benefits. I mean, amazing, amazing benefits to it. And also, just like we got the internet, and it was this incredible moment of connecting every person in the world that had internet and where we could share information. And then the downside, yeah, I could also share misinformation and disinformation and hate and anger and export some terrible ideas around the world. And so it's always just expressing and amplifying what we already have inside of us as human beings. But what happens is it's lowering and lowering our attention span and our ability to sense the subtle energies of life. And we're so used to getting answers when we have questions by asking the internet, the AI, that it's putting our muscles of finding out for ourselves into atrophy. And there's a real downside to that. And when we do intuitive training, a lot of what we're doing is learning to see. So we're seeing pictures, we're seeing energy, we're seeing color. And when we're hit with constant images from our screens, we don't have to create images or see images. We're passively taking them in. And that kind of makes the third eye weaker and weaker. It's really not used to paying attention anymore or seeing images that aren't passively given to us. And so I've noticed as a teacher, there's definitely been an uphill battle in the last 5 or so years, more so than in the past, on getting people to sit still, pay attention, be able to see clearly. And that's just the nature of where we're at. So it's in a way, it's almost like when somebody's coming off an addiction and they're getting itchy and they got to get a hit of whatever it is. And as a teacher, I'm like, the uncomfortability of this process is the point. You're burning off all of this stuff that's taken over your consciousness. Go through the uncomfortability. Even if it's in one meditation, if it's a 20-minute meditation and 8 minutes in, you're like, I need input. I need images. I need
Need
entertainment.
stimuli.
I need some
Yeah.
stimulus. You have
You're
to
not
burn through
stimulating enough, David.
that. So imagine if you decide, all right, I'm going to do some intuitive work and I'm going to sit for an hour, 90 minutes, and just look at the energy of another human being and having to be there and pay attention that whole time. Most people, it's the first 20 minutes that's the hardest. That's when that irritability and that lack of attention hits. And there are meditation tools you can learn to release that energy and be neutral as it kind of burns off of you. So if you're someone that gives into that all the time, it might be good in your meditation practice to sit still and let that energy just start to burn off and sit still anyway when you're uncomfortable. Otherwise, you'll never reach the place of where you can hear, see, or feel your intuition.
Yeah. It is that first 20 minutes where all the noise and distraction gets processed and is kind of coming up. And if we can get through that, if we have a way to sit maybe with some tools and connected to energy and just get through that, then it's a whole different game. Things kind of settle in, energy really starts to move. And how to train your intuition. One aspect of it, of course, is learning how to move into that place within ourselves where we can see energy. So it's learning into how to move into the energy or the space. where our intuition is and access it. But a lot of it, in terms of reading, is really about training our focus, learning how to focus on something and look at some specific thing. And in many ways, it is a narrowing of our focus when we're reading to that one person or that one layer of the aura or that one question that we're looking at, and looking at it through the lens of energy, not through the lens of what I think or what I already know, or any preconceived ideas, but what is it right in front of me that I'm seeing, and then reading that information.
And it might start off as a color or a shape
Right.
or a cloud. And then you're like, well, what is that cloud? And then you sit with that and it slowly unfolds and you start to get an impression, a knowingness of what it is. And it is a muscle that you build over many, many hours of practice. And anyone who's, for me, who's a skeptic of this kind of work, which I have many friends who are, not a single one of them has ever sat down to actually try. And
Right.
it's funny. It's like if you're open-minded, you and I'm telling you, the only way to know this is through your own subjective experience. Then, if you really want to know, why don't you sit down and give it a few hundred hours and see what happens? But it's that there's an underlying, in my experience, often an unconscious fear that that would just smash somebody's worldview of what reality is if they actually bridge that, or of how they see themselves and how they think the world sees them. Then they all of a sudden they're spiritual or woo or something, so that their ego identity is just so strong they can't even go near that as as a possibility.
Yeah. I mean that fear is not unwarranted. We have to decide we want to go into this space regardless of what might kind of come up in terms of fears. But yes, it can be a little uncomfortable in those, if you're a skeptic, or you don't want to believe it, then why would you move into that discomfort to discover? So they never try. But there's some truth to where it can challenge our beliefs. Not that we are say you have to believe a particular way, but when you move into that space of truly just seeing spirit and seeing energy and seeing through that lens, you're moving kind of beyond belief. Like belief doesn't define it, expectations don't define it, what you already know doesn't define it. You're opening up to see into the mystery, and through that you get a new insight that might ultimately change your beliefs, or it might change how you see the world. Um, Hopefully it expands how you see the world and how you see things working, that includes uh, what we could call spirit, or includes a recognition of the soul, and maybe a recognition of kind of a sacredness of the human to human connection, when it is connecting spirit to spirit and not ego to ego. It's not a connection that is um, kind of fraught with conflict, which is like the ego tends to be adversarial. It's a connection that is all in communication and kind of recognition in each other, a deeper truth. And all those things are happening in a reading. So a reading is a very dynamic interaction that happens.
Yeah. You know that that reminds me, while we're on this topic, there's a new book out by Dan Brown, the author of the Da Vinci Code. I think it's called The Secret of Secrets, and me and you should do an episode
Yes.
about this book.
It
Uh,
is. It has been exploding in
yeah.
the. I
And
mean, maybe everywhere, but certainly in the intuitive circles I uh, operate in. That everybody's talking about it.
yeah,
So
I think he spent
interesting.
8 years on this book, and I just saw him interview Dr. Dean Radin, who me and you interviewed some years ago.
I saw that you sent me that. That was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, about so it's all about these abilities. Obviously, he puts it into a novel form because that's his medium and how he teaches. But just Dan Brown's incredible open-mindedness to it, and he didn't believe in any of this before he started the journey. And the deeper he got into it, he was like, "Wow, this is a pretty cool space." And so, yeah, let's definitely do an episode on that. And if you guys haven't heard yet, I think it's called of this book yet. I think it's called The Secret of Secrets. Um, and
Yeah.
it's just so cool that he's opening up his audience, such a large audience, to this kind of work. That the telepathy tapes, there's definitely kind of a cultural moment here. But even when Dan Brown talks about it with Dr. Dean Radin or other scientists, it's always from an intellectual point of view. It's never experiential. It's always theorizing on what it could be, how it could be, what the data shows. And really, I think that's fine. That's nice, but it's missing the point because this is a subjective thing. This is a subjective science. You experience it and it unfolds in your own consciousness when you close your eyes. And versus the rest of science is very objective. It's studying the world out there. And I don't think it ever gets to the point where someone's like, all right, well, how do I do it? And then they're taught how to do it in a structured, safe, consistent way. I've seen a
Right.
thousand YouTube videos on this topic, and in none of them does anyone ever teach you how to do it. And it's like they're always talking about, well, we did this experiment where we had four people call one person and they had to intuitively decide which person was calling. And by statistical significance, they were able to, on occasion, choose the right person. I mean, that is like 0.0001% of the work we do, and it has no value to me whatsoever as a teacher. And it's like,
Yeah.
guys, give your students and the people a little bit more credit of what their abilities are and what heights that they could reach. If you just put down that worried about um, being seen as woo woo by some academic you're concerned about or something and actually do the work. So I've always found that really interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but
yeah,
through that science lens, you have to prove it, right?
yeah.
So, and then you can only prove something that you could design an experiment around. So there's lots of this realm, this experience that happens that it is just experiential. There is no way to prove that you just got an insight and your life is better and you feel better about yourself or you know something about your path. How is that going to be objectively proved? And so a lot of those experiments, yeah, they're fun to go, oh wow, it's real, that we can show it's real, but what value does it really have in terms of someone's growth or someone getting their own answers and taking steps forward or learning how to do it even? Yeah,
They're really not showing the arc from going from who's going to call next to is this the right life partner for me or is this the career
right.
path I want to take? There's no arc there.
Yeah.
So,
That's a
uh,
big leap. Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm so lucky because I almost went, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I almost ended up going for my master's degree in a branch of psychology, but it just wasn't, it never felt right. And I ended up in Hawaii doing the intuitive development instead, where it was just 100% hands-on, no books, truly just your own experience and thousands of hours of practice. And I think it took me being on an island in a little tiny bubble to be able to experience that and not be swayed by the rest of the world until I was stable enough in my own work and awareness that I was able to go back out into the world and really still have that awareness. So, in almost every spiritual tradition, you'll see where people you go off into the monastery, into the ashram, into the Himalayas, into the temple in Japan, wherever it is, and you separate yourself from the world because the world's effects, the pull of the world is very strong, and you train in a safe bubble, right? In one in one specific area, you master something, and then you go back out into the world having those tools. And there's a great book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. If you've never read it, it's a classic where he gets all of these amazing tools and then he goes back out into the world and you watch him use them in life. It's beautiful. And I say all that to say, like, even when people take our intuitive training, one of the first things we tell them is while you're doing this training, don't do any other trainings. Just for this year, stop doing 10,000 things so you know what it is that actually is working and what isn't working. And you know where your intuition is coming from and you know what you're learning. And that's an important part of the process is like give yourself the space to do one thing instead of 10 things all the time, having your energy spread and you're not sure what is actually having a real effect. And that was always very helpful for me was to focus and to
Yeah.
do it and the repetition and to build that muscle. And then in my life, out of all the spiritual stuff I've ever done, ashrams in India and all the places I've been, all the teachers I've worked with, learning to read energy has always been the number one most powerful and useful spiritual tool that I've ever learned because no matter what somebody tells me or what teacher says they have the ultimate answers or truth, I always could just sit and close my eyes and read that energy for myself and get my own answers versus relying on someone else, on a book, on on an AI.
Right. On an AI. Yeah.
From AI to EI, from artificial intelligence to energetic intelligence. That's the journey.
That is the journey. Yeah. Yeah, and that focusing on one thing allows you to go much deeper into
Yeah.
that one thing. And that notion holds true in other trainings. I mean, in the martial arts, it's the same thing. Don't train in two different arts at the same time because they're doing stuff differently and you'll have conflict. And then you're spending your time trying to resolve the differences between two things that you don't know that much about yet. So you don't even know why they're doing it that way, this way or that way. And so then there you are on the surface of a conflict that you're trying to resolve where things are different in different modalities. But to go deep into one area then lets you come to understand not only that thing, but kind of why it's being done that way. And there is great depth that you can go into, certainly in this intuitive path.
I think I'm sure this goes for you too, but as a teacher, if I could have one thing, it would be that every time a student asks me a question, I could just say, I want you to close your eyes and look at that for yourself, and then
Right.
them get the answer. And so the intuitive journey, whatever kind of training it is, that's the point is to give you the tools for you to be able to do that. Without having the tools and the training, it's going to be too hard. There's too much noise. You don't know how to look yet. You don't have the mechanics, but you can get to a place where you can start to look and find your own answers. When I have all these courses on Insight Timer and thousands of questions, and they used to ask me to respond to every single one. And you know what's happened? No joke. They've added an AI that will respond for you as a teacher. You just choose the answer and then you
Oh,
click it and it responds to the student. No joke.
that's way faster.
So it's way faster. So I stopped responding to the questions because I don't want to do that. That's pretty lame. And there's too many questions. I couldn't do it anymore. It was overwhelming. Not the best use of my time. But the questions are, they're always similar. How do I know when dot dot dot? How do I release this energy I'm stuck on? How come I can't get past this thing? How do I know it's my, how do I know when? How do I? Is this the right? I've seen thousands of these, Cody. And I still I
Right.
get messages. I get all over the place. And if I could do one thing for everybody, it would be to teach them how to close their eyes, ask that question instead of getting the answer from me, and then getting that
Look
insight
at it.
for themselves.
Yeah,
Look
it
at it
is.
and get
The
the.
answer is you look at it. Yeah.
And sometimes I'll have students send me, I mean, not a sentence, but a paragraph or 2 pages
Right.
where there's just stream of consciousness. And when I look at it, I'm like, you're all you're writing to me is pain, right? So it's just pain in all its forms and the story behind the pain and how you're stuck or spinning out on the pain. So no matter what the details of the story are, like if I had that student with me in person or here, I would say, I want you to close your eyes and look at how much of what you just said and shared is pain. And then when you start to recognize that, can we start to release the pain? Can I show you how to release the pain? Instead of being stuck on, let me get the answer, let me figure it out if things were just different. No, just look at the energy of the pain and where it is in you, on you, around you, in your energy field, and let's release it. And then after they release the pain, that's when the answers tend to come. And that's the part that's 90% of it. And that's the part everybody wants to skip.
Right.
They just want the answer. Like, no, the answer is 10%. 90 is in the work, is in the energy work of releasing the pain.
Right. Yeah, because you have to get from where you are, whatever it is you're stuck on, to the place to have the answer. And because the answer is already there, it's that you can't yet have it and integrate it. You can't see it. So you have to get through those energies to have the answer. So as a teacher, even if we give you the answer, it doesn't do anything. It's like I don't have your answers for you. I know how to teach you to get your own answers. And then that's where you take a step. That's where you grow. That's where you change, is when you look and get your own answer.
And I think and what I was trying to say is the focus is too much on the answer and not enough on the energy. And so when we do the intuitive training, we help students refocus on put the answer aside for a moment and let's look at the energy. And then when you work through the energy, the answer is it
Is
lands.
there.
It just
Yeah.
is. It was there the whole time. It's
Right.
just it's just buried under a bunch of pain. I have one meditation that I think has something like 60,000 comments. And most of them are, thank you, this made me feel better. Or it didn't, you suck. It was like, that's rare, not as often, hopefully. But it's either this made me feel better or it didn't. And it's so, my job as a teacher is not to just make you feel better. I could give you a Tylenol, or it's for you to grow and get answers and to shift. And sometimes that takes feeling worse. And it's almost like the algorithm tries to squeeze us as teachers into just trying to make everyone feel better all the time. Certain algorithms, you're just trying to make everyone feel worse. It's like rage, anger, whatever, rage bait, whatever it is, like that's the whole journey. And then in our world, it's like I want you to make everyone feel better all the time. And I found myself, oh God, I put you to sleep, make you feel better in the morning. Like my job is not just to make you feel better, it's to wake you up to the truth of who you are. And sometimes that
Yes.
means you got to go through a shitload of pain to get there.
That's uncomfortable at times. There has to be a moment of discomfort in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that doesn't go away necessarily. Like we still have to go through that a moment of that discomfort when things kind of start to get stimulated and light up, and then move forward anyway. And then because we have enough experience to know that, yeah, that's transitory, and on the other side, there's a bigger space or an answer or a step. Yeah.
And there is compounding interest here.
Yes.
Put on my financial hat. There's
It does compound.
it- if you do this for 5, 10, 20 years and you really put the work in, it really does. It is exponential. The way you can handle life, the way you can have inner peace when there's chaos, the way you can find your answers. And in my experience, the vast majority of students, they feel confused, they're stuck, right? They always come to, I'm in pain, I'm stuck, I'm confused. And what no one is teaching them is great. I want you to sit, close your eyes and look at the confusion. What is it made of? Where did it come from? What are the pictures behind it? Let's work through the confusion itself. It's always give me the answer so I'm not confused. And that is the huge misdirect, I think. So, um, So let's release some confusion. And I think the meditation, Cody, you're going to walk us through today. And part of what we've been talking about is how to get your own information
Yeah.
in this world where there's too much of it. How do you actually learn to see, know your own energy, and get your own information versus just spinning out because of the world?
Yes.
Help us,
I
Cody.
think that's helped us.
Before we jump into the meditation, if you're here live, any questions, comments, feel free to put them in the chat. And if you're on YouTube or podcast somewhere like that, it's free. Just go on our website and you can do the meditation with us. Um,
Right.
yeah. Any questions? We have a lot of people here. It's great to see everyone. What a beautiful group. Thank you so much for coming live and sitting here with us and being in the energy. When I started this journey, I was so hungry for spiritual work. I flew to Hawaii with no money and hitchhiked out at the airport and had nowhere to live. I was like, what the F am I doing with my life? But I want this so badly. I'll do
That's
anything.
amazing.
I lived in a tent for 3 months on a farm doing hard labor. Then I put kayaks on cars. I did everything I could to pay the bills to find a way just to learn this information we're talking about now because there was no YouTube. I mean, there was no podcasting, whatever. There's no way to learn other than in person at the time. They would mail,
Yeah.
they would mail cassette tapes out to students who were not on the island of really bad quality audio. And and
When I started, we didn't even have cassette tapes. You had to be there live or you missed it.
yeah, there wasn't electricity yet, of course.
Of course. But
Yeah.
that is an amazing story because I mean, my vision of the level of roughing it you would get to is like maybe glam camping might be your sense of a really rough weekend. I can't imagine you lived for 3 months in
I
a
know. I was
tent.
younger David. I had it in me. A couple of questions. Yeah, I mean, living in the ashram in India, that was an upgrade. The tent. Um,
Well, true.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
like a. it was like
You
anyway,
you're pretty
will
rough.
Lindsay was asking, will you do intuitive training level 2 and up next year? Yes, it's going to be all 4 levels. Level 1 starts March 31st, and then 3 months after that, we'll start level 2. We'll do all 4. Um, yeah, it's this year. You're right. It's January. Yeah. Do you
This
ever
year.
do you focus very much on learning to protect your own energy? Yeah, for sure. That is a huge part of training because so much of us not being able to find our energy and answers is because of all the energy that we take on from the rest of the world. That's one of the biggest parts of the training. Like, are these my thoughts or did I absorb them from the external world? Are these my feelings or did I absorb them from the external world? And learning how to tell the difference, that's the first part of protecting yourself, right? That
Yeah.
awareness, and then learning how to release the energy after you do absorb it is really, really important. And then there are some very specific tools we teach for how to protect yourself. You can't ever fully go, nothing's coming into my field unless you just want to live in a closet and not deal with the human race, which I have seen spiritual people do. But there are tools that we do teach for self-protection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you have to through the practice you start to build the strength of your own energy. And there's certainly a a relationship between how much you can let yourself really open up to seeing and open up your psychic abilities and how safe you feel and protected. So we have to teach both. Otherwise you just have you're at a limit. And
yeah.
yeah.
And just to go, we'll do this in training, but not everyone gets hit by the same energies. Like some energies might pass through Cody, but land on me, and they don't pass through me as easily, or vice versa. And so there's a reason that certain energies stick to you. And we go over that in training. Why does guilt stick to you when it comes from a certain kind of person, but anger doesn't when it comes from that person? So you have some kind of match, as we might call it, in intuitive training with that kind of person or energy. And that's why it sticks to you. So it's less about protection and more about working through your own layers of energy so that there's nothing for it to stick to in the first place. And I think that is ener- energy protection, I think, is like 20%. and 80% is the actual releasing the places where it would stick to you at all. That's where you really want to be so that you can go out in the world and be in a crowd or be with someone intense or in pain or judgmental and and um and still have fun with your family.
Yeah. And to me, that is the ultimate form of being kind of protecting your psychic space. It's not protection is not something I put between you and me. It's something I hold within myself where energies aren't sticking to me. I'm not getting caught up in things. They all exist, and there are certain things, yes, they stick to in me. And once I resolve those, then I'm neutral to it. It's just out there. But that's the type of thing you develop over time. You grow in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. If you are sensitive kinesthetically and auditorily, but not visually, yeah, pretty much, Cheryl, everyone says that to us when training starts. I can feel or hear or whatever it is, but I can't see. That is like 95% of people. And like I said earlier, it's because this mind's eye is an atrophy. It's obviously there's a very small percentage of people who actually can't see mental images, and we could work with that just more through knowingness. But the vast majority of people, it's not that they can't see, it's that they have the muscle is just in atrophy, and they need to practice and practice and practice, and we do that.
Yeah.
And
There's
also
that.
there's energy in the way sometimes.
Yeah, there's energy in the way. I think there's that aspect of it. I also think we're all adept at feeling, and that's very much tied to being safe in the world. So it's very much tied to our survival. So we tend to lean toward that. Everybody's very sensitive on that level of, well, I'm feeling out if this person's safe or that, or if I should go this direction, that direction. So part of the arc of the intuitive training is moving out of relating to energy kind of at that base survival level and up to looking at it kind of from a spirit, soul, like growth perspective. Like, what's the answer here? That's the next step. What's the answer here that lets this person get up unstuck? What's the answer that's going to validate who they truly are at a deeper level? And that's what we start to see from the sixth chakra.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great questions. Thank you all. Did I miss any? I think one more. In speaking about healing through the soul's wisdom through images, what is integrating the wisdom look like in comparison to logically understanding the reason why something's coming up? So I think you can integrate wisdom and then the rational part of you can also understand it. That's great. That's totally fine. But there's a knowingness that happens when we're reading energy that's very hard to describe. Maybe the metaphor is like in music when you just know how to hear the tone. No matter how much I describe it intellectually, it's not the same thing as actually hearing the note and being in flow with the music. So there's something that happens experientially with a sense of knowingness, with information and wisdom that kind of comes in, lands into your body, that you have to experience. And then, by the way, same in music. If you do this in music, then maybe you become a good teacher and you have to use rationality and logic to teach somebody else. Here's the structure, here the way you play the keys. And then eventually they themselves find that flow with the music. But still, there's this ethereal thing that you have to experience with wisdom that nobody can hand to you. Yeah. All right, time-wise, I think it's time for Cody to guide us
Yeah.
a little bit
Do a
into
little
meditation.
meditation here.
Thank you all so much for the great questions. And if you're just listening to the podcast, thank you for being here with us.